Hello, good evening, good day, everybody, wherever you are. Good day or good evening. I hope you're all doing very well, and welcome back to the Ask Abhijit show, the live stream, episode 207. In this live stream, I will take questions from the live chat. So I hope you have your questions ready. And let me see who all is on the live stream. I can see Prathamesh, Hyper NS, Akshay Kulkarni, Yamraj, Martian, Biswajit, Lone Rider, Shailaja, Random Skull, Somi Jain, Sanvi, Saral Sharma, Varun Singh Malik, Anish, Nirmala Parulekar, Shagun Chopra, Namaskar, Shrivatsa, Shreyas, Rishit Agera, Shivam Gautam, Anish, Bhushan Babar, Praveen Gudaparthi, Anish, RK, Nikhil Negi, Deep, Kajale, Rutik, Sri Ramachandraya Namaha, Ram Ram, Rushi Shete, Ansh Prakash, Geopolitical Dubey, hello, Ubendran, Suraj Maiti, Kanglai, Jai Hind, Kar, Kartavirya, Basant 007, Archan Pandya, Dungar Singh Chauhan, let's go, Pranay, Nutan Roshan, KT, Mamad 72, Vidhi Manyar, hello, Bibekanand Panda, Geopolitical Dubey again, Bob Marlins, GK, Rashmi Singh, Pranay Kumar, Pritam Sharma, Manisha Cardozo, Rachit Tendulkar, Three Idiots, Suraj Maithi, Bhavesh Sharma, Netizen, Sahil Gupta, Rushi Shetty, Srinidhi Ranganath, and lots of other people. Feminist Slayer, Matrix, I, Marp, Usai, Golu, Dr. Jaishankar, hello, Shashwat Mukherjee, hi, Yashvardhan Singh Dodhia, Neeraj Chopra, Dipanshu Nitham, Rishikesh Uttarkar, Yash Singh, Jawaharlal Chavda, Summit Statement, Cheryl Patel, Naveen Sai, Vemuri, Kabir Z, and everybody else. Okay, let me stop greeting you all at that stage. And Deepak Kajale, I got your surname the second time wrong. I hope I got it right this time. Okay, let's get going with the questions. Lots of stuff happening in the world right now. As always, lots of changes happening, lots of things happening, lots of developments, geopolitical developments, other developments. So let's cover some of these things. McLevin asks a question that has nothing to do with geopolitics. Are there actually people who don't have an internal monologue? How do they function? Is it just cricket sounds? I don't know. I believe that there are people who don't have an internal monologue. The internal monologue is the internal commentator passing comments, always talking to yourself. That's the internal monologue. Uh, some people have it. Apparently, some people don't have it. I'm not sure how they function. They do function pretty well, I'm sure. I think Wolfgang Pauli had a colleague, Wolfgang Pauli, the physicist, in the 1950s or 60s, had a colleague, another physicist, who apparently did not have a monologue or something. And they discovered it accidentally while doing some measurements, some experimental physics measurements, etc. So people function in different ways. Uh, some people don't have it apparently, and it doesn't prevent them from functioning just as well, if not better, than people who do have an internal monologue. Interesting question. Geopolitical Dubey says, how will Russia react to Prime Minister Modi's Ukraine visit? No issues. India is an independent sovereign nation. India has its interests. India will do what is best in its interest, and India is not going and creating an alliance with Ukraine or opposing Russia's positions. So right now, Prime Minister Modi, today he visited Ukraine. He met with President Zelensky. The two leaders hugged. So what does this visit of Prime Minister Modi to Ukraine signify? So first of all, we have to understand that there's an element of national interest in this matter. So what is India's national interest in visiting Ukraine, in Prime Minister Modi visiting Ukraine, just 5 or 6 weeks after he visits Moscow and meets with President Ukraine? What does India get out of this visit to Ukraine? First of all, India probably is offering its good offices to the world when it comes to potentially taking this matter to the negotiating table. So how does that help India if the war is potentially ended through negotiations? Look, India, as we know, the economy is of paramount interest to India, the Indian economy. India's economy needs to grow. It needs to keep growing at a steady rate, at a good rate, the next 20, 30 years. We need that to happen. Now, if the rest of the world's economy is depressed, then that doesn't help India. It affects India. See, the entire world is interconnected. And right now, the economy of Europe is greatly depressed because of the events that are happening in the Ukraine region, right? Germany's economy entered a recession some time ago. Other economies in Europe are not doing well. So if the war ends, then hopefully the European economy starts taking off again to some extent, and that's overall good for India and the rest of the world. So India is definitely capable of mediating in this dispute, let's say. India is uniquely positioned in the world to act as a bridge between East and West if both sides so desire. Okay, both sides need to desire this. So Prime Minister Modi's visit to Ukraine is essentially a courtesy visit. See, Ukraine is not a stakeholder in this matter. Ukraine is a proxy. This war that's happening is a proxy war between Russia and the US, Russia and NATO. And NATO is controlled and owned by the US. It's a proxy war. And Ukraine is the cannon fodder. Ukraine is the proxy. And Ukraine as a nation has been devastated by the war. The Ukrainian population is badly skewed now because all the young men are dying in the war, you see. And Russia is going to be able to keep the war going. Russia is perfectly fine with the war going as long as it goes on. Right now, the war is meandering. It's a slow war situation, despite whatever little incursions happen here and there or quirks or whatever, right? So that's overall bad for the global economy. It's bad for the Indian economy also. It's also going to affect the Indian economy. So India can offer to mediate, and by visiting Ukraine, which essentially is just a proxy nation, Prime Minister Modi is signaling India's willingness to, if both sides so desire, to act as a mediator. And India is uniquely positioned to talk to both sides, Russia as well as the West, with a great amount of comfort and trust, because India doesn't have a horse in this race, right? Unlike nations like China, etc. So that's what it was. That's what this visit is. It's a courtesy visit. It's a signal to the West that we would be willing to offer our good offices for mediation in case you are willing to do so. So right now, the impediment towards negotiations is the West. Putin has said many times, that he's willing to negotiate. He's open to negotiations. But the West doesn't want diplomacy. They want the war to continue. They have their own calculations and agenda, right? So that's the situation right now, and that's what the visit is about. So I don't see any reason why President Putin would be upset with this visit of Mr. Modi to Ukraine. Okay. McLevin says China has extradited a couple of khalistanis. Really, I was not aware of that. What does that say? Our relations are getting better with China. Well, that remains to be seen. Okay, I'm not aware of this particular piece of news that they have extradited a couple of khalistanis. If they have, good. But we are definitely seeing signs and symptoms of the relationship maybe getting on a slightly better track. Okay, and there are lots of reasons for this, and it all goes back to what happened recently in Bangladesh, the US engineered regime change operation, the coup that happened in Bangladesh. And the pro-India government was ousted, and a strongly anti-India government has come to power. And there's also a civil war situation in Myanmar right now, like I've spoken many times before. And that essentially is a disaster for China, because the Myanmar government, the military government, was pro-China. Now they control less than 50% of the territory of Burma. And the rebels who control the territory that the government has lost are all pro-US. So there's this Project K that I've spoken about, right? Project Cookie Land. The project to create a new artificial de facto Christian de facto nation out of Burma and Bangladesh and parts of India, Manipur and Mizoram. So that is underway, and that affects India It also affects China badly, and this upcoming U.S. military base, Saint Martin's Island, is gonna be it's gonna enable the Americans to project power like never before in the Bay of Bengal region, and that also affects the Malacca Strait, which is a kind of China's Achilles heel. So let's go to the map. Let's open the map. I'm glad we have occasion to see the map right away. So if you look at the map, this island that the Americans are going to acquire, okay, this tiny island over here, St. Martin's Island, which is ideally shaped for creating a air base and other things as well. So from here, the Americans can possibly interdict the Strait of Malacca. Now, it looks like a very tiny island, but the Americans have very powerful power projection capabilities, very powerful missile systems, etc. They can definitely interdict Chinese access to the Strait of Malacca, which is disaster for China. Burma, if it slips out of China's hand, like it already has, it's a disaster for China. And the Chinese have various projects that they would like to undertake in Burma. And now all of that comes within range of St. Martin's Island, this future upcoming US military base. So overall, it's very bad for China. And let's go back to the map. And China is essentially being encircled, just like India is being encircled by US proxies. India is being encircled by US proxies. Nepal is kind of a Chinese proxy, and so is Maldives. But when it comes to China, Myanmar becomes a US proxy. Thailand, all these Southeast Asian nations have very good relations, let's say, with Thailand. So does Indonesia, Malaysia. So does the Philippines, right? Japan, South Korea are under US occupation. So China is being encircled. Okay. They have Russia that they have reasonably good relations with, and they have a terrible relationship with India, which is entirely China's fault. India did not cause this relationship to go so bad. So now maybe the Chinese are their calculations are changing, and maybe they are beginning to see that they need to have better relations with India. And you can see the signs and symptoms of that in the kind of official government articles that are coming out in the Global Times, etc., which is a Chinese Communist Party propaganda mouthpiece media outlet. You can see rather positive articles towards India coming out, which is very unusual for the Global Times. They're very stridently harsh towards India usually. That's happening. One hears that the government of India is now considering allowing Chinese companies to invest in India in joint ventures, etc. Well, that's an eye opener, right? And now apparently, like I cannot confirm this news. I've not seen it myself, but assuming it's true, well, that's another that the Chinese have extradited a couple of individuals. Well, that's interesting as well. So it looks like something is brewing, but in I'm saying this to my Indian audience. I'm sure there are there's a much wider audience as well, but to my Indian audience, I'll tell you this, that it is very one has to be very careful when it comes to trusting China. Okay, I think we should heed the lessons of history. The Chinese, they are a dangerous customer to deal with. One has to be very careful with them. You cannot assume that because they say a few nice things they become friends with India. All right. Their past track record from the 1950s until let's say last week has been rather dubious and very strongly anti-India. They used to support, in terms of arms, ammunition, funding, logistical support, moral support, diplomatic support, etc., various anti-India terrorist elements, separatist elements, insurgent elements in India's Far East, in India's what you call the Northeast, etc. They've done all that. They, in the past, have written articles about the need to balkanize India. The Chinese have written that. So one has to be very careful when dealing with the Chinese. You can't suddenly believe that, yeah, we can trust the Chinese now. You can trust but verify. And the trust will happen in very incremental quantum steps, quantized steps, essentially. And for China to genuinely gain some amount of trust vis-a-vis India, they will need to sit down once and for all at the negotiating table and demarcate the border with India. They have refused to demarcate the border for decades. They've been dragging their feet forever because they want to keep that border dispute open so as to keep on pressurizing India via border incursions and whatnot. So that would be the first step we would need for us being able to potentially start thinking of trusting China to a certain extent. Okay, one has to be very careful with China. But overall, that is the situation. Rakesh Pandit says, is the Giza pyramid or pyramids, is it any kind of electric device? Well, I have seen no evidence of that. When I was doing my master's degree in physics, there was this professor. He specialized in electronics. The physics department I was in was full of people who specialized in electronics. And this gentleman, this professor, he was doing experiments with pyramids, like small scale pyramids, a kind of pyramid, 2 square meters or something, its base. And he was doing various experiments. It's interesting that people actually have the desire to do experiments in India. So he was putting various chemical solutions inside the pyramid at a certain part of the pyramid and seeing what is the rate at which the chemical reaction is progressing. Does it, if you put it inside a pyramidal structure, does it accelerate the chemical reaction in some way beyond what you would naturally expect it to progress like naturally, and all that? So it was interesting to do that. I found it at the time kind of pseudoscientific. Right now I would say that why not? If you have a hunch that there may be something somewhere, then test it out. So he was doing proper scientific experiments. I'm not sure what the outcome was, but interesting. So there's always been this belief for a very long time among us humans that pyramids are a special kind of structure. If you look at Indian temples, Hindu temples for the past 2-3 thousand years, you will see that they are all kind of pyramid shaped. They actually seek to replicate the pyramidal structure of Mount Kailash. Okay, so there is some kind of fascination with the pyramidal shape, that geometric shape. But as far as I know, there is no evidence that there is anything. Uh, any We don't quite know what the purpose of the pyramids was, right? The Egyptian pyramids in Giza. So let's go to the map once again. Let's try and find out where these pyramids are. Oh, where am I going? Egypt, Misr. So you go to Al Cairo, and in the outskirts of Cairo, you have the pyramids. Will I be able to discover them right away, or will it take me some time? Okay, where are the pyramids? Pyramid of Giza is right here. There we have it. Okay. So these pyramids on the outskirts of Cairo, and if you look at the alignment, that's the belt of Orion, essentially. So we don't quite know what the purpose of these structures was. In Hollywood movies, it is depicted as tombs of pharaohs, but I promise you that they have not discovered a single mummy inside a pyramid thus far. So we don't quite know what the purpose of these pyramids was. And there are hidden chambers that have been discovered but not explored yet, and so on. So there's definitely a mystery about what the purpose of the pyramids was. But as far as I know, we have not discovered any electrical device kind of purpose of the pyramids, not as far as I know. So that is the answer I can give you. The answer is that there's a lot about the world that we don't quite know, and this is kind of a mystery right now. All right. Okay. Rahul Sharma says, okay, once again, Ukraine, about Mr. Modi's visit to Ukraine. I think Mr. Modi wants to make an agreement of peace between Russia and Ukraine to divert in US attention from India. Smart move. No, look, there's no agreement that's going to happen between Russia and Ukraine. The Ukraine war, like I said, is a proxy war, and it's a proxy war between Russia and NATO, or Russia and the US. Ukraine is a puppet. Ukraine is a proxy. Any negotiations, if they happen, will not be between Mr. Zelensky and Mr. Putin. Mr. Zelensky will be brought in as a figurehead, but the real negotiating will be between the Russians and the Americans. Okay? So if any agreement of peace or whatever happens, it's going to be between Russia and the US, Russia and NATO, not Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine, unfortunately, doesn't matter in this conflict. Ukraine is cannon fodder. Ukraine is a proxy. So this visit is a courtesy visit. It seeks to signal to the West and to the East, which is Russia, that India can mediate in this matter. India is uniquely positioned to have a good amount of comfort and trust with both sides. So we are in a good position to do that if both sides want. That's what it is. And this does nothing to divert US attention from India whatsoever. The Americans, they have 3,000 eyes. They don't have two eyes. Okay? They have eyes and ears everywhere. No attention is being diverted from anywhere, especially India. The Americans are definitely very much focused on the subcontinent region right now. See what they did in Bangladesh, right? Regime change operation. And there's more. They have lots of other proxies. Pakistan is a very valuable US proxy. The Taliban allegedly receives a weekly stipend of between 50 to 80 million dollars in cash from the Americans. So once again, that's a proxy, and so on. So the Americans have the tremendous amount of focus on the Indian subcontinent region. There's no diverting their attention from here. All right. Pritam Sharma says, are wars and interference globally hurting the US just like the British Empire? Is it too much to handle for the Americans going forward, or is this the hegemony they aspire for? These wars are not hurting the US. Yeah, it kind of affects the economy for sure. It has definitely depressed the European economy. Germany is not doing well at all. There are the other nations in Europe are not doing well. The economies are depressed. Some are in recession, etc. So it does affect the economy, but the Americans are fine with that. They can print dollars as they wish, and they'll be fine. And look, the British Empire fought so many wars all across Eurasia, etc. It did not affect them. It made them stronger as long as they won the wars, and it served their interests. The Crimean War and so many other wars. So it's not going to be too much to handle for the Americans. Like I said, there were 1,000 eyes, 1,000 ears, 1,000 hands and feet, and whatnot. More than 800 extraterritorial military bases, and much more. So it's not going to affect them at all. They can certainly handle that. They are the world's most powerful military machine by far. The only advantage the Russians have over the Americans is their nuclear warheads. So yeah, so the Americans aspire for the world to be bipolar or unipolar place. Unipolarity means they are the only superpower. They are the only superpower, but they don't. Unipolarity means there are no other powers that can challenge the US. Right now, Russia can challenge the US. Even the Chinese can kind of economically, to some extent, challenge the US, not militarily. So right now, the US is not in a unipolar world. It's kind of a multipolarish world right now. The Americans would either want a unipolar world or a bipolar world in which you have the US and China as the major powers. They don't want Russia to be a major power. They're okay with China being a major power because they can handle China. They know how to handle China economically. China is an economic power, not much of a military power. Whatever experts say, China is not much of a military power, especially when you compare China's military might with the American military might. There's no comparison whatsoever. So that's the situation. Okay, Venkatesh Kaloni asks about, well, physics. Please explain Coriolis force and how it affects cyclones in different hemispheres. The Coriolis force is a fictitious force. It's a pseudo force. Well, if you if you've done some physics, you'll get what it means. See, it arises because of the rotation of the Earth along its axis, around its axis. Right? We know that the Earth, the planet. Let me put this map again, and let's do some physics with the map. We know that the planet is slightly tilted and it rotates. It rotates along its axis, and the equator is where. Well, the plane of rotation essentially, and this rotation of the Earth produces what we call the Coriolis force, and it essentially affects the way in which these cyclones are formed. So you will see clockwise and counterclockwise cyclones, okay, whether you are depending on which side of the equator you're on, and that there is an element of the Coriolis force in that. So essentially, technically, in terms of physics, you would call it a pseudo force or a fictitious force, and it is something that definitely affects the formation and the evolution of cyclones, hurricanes, whatever you want to call them, typhoons, on both sides of the equator. Okay. Mm, okay. You says, does India possess significant geopolitical dominance globally, despite struggling to handle pressure from smaller countries like Qatar in the past? Okay, geopolitical dominance, so you say. So once again, let's take a look at where India is located. Let's remove the pyramids of Giza. We don't need them anymore for now. This is where India is located geographically, right? Now, India is the largest power in the Indian Ocean region and in the Indian subcontinent region. It is the second most powerful nation in Asia and the third most powerful nation in Eurasia after Russia, China, and then you have India across Eurasia. But the actual most powerful nation in Eurasia is the US because they have a significant foothold and footprint across Eurasia, and they are by far the most powerful nation. Now, if we talk about the Indian subcontinent, look at the kind of nations India finds itself surrounded with. Pakistan, which is a US proxy. Afghanistan, which has good relations with India, Taliban, but it still is a US proxy. You have Nepal, which unfortunately of late has kind of become a quasi Chinese proxy. You have Bhutan, which is an Indian protectorate. Then you have Bangladesh, which is now a newly minted US puppet state. Sri Lanka, you could say it's a US proxy. The Maldives are a Chinese proxy. The Maldives, well, here we are. Then you have Burma, which is in the middle of a terrible civil war. It is torn in the middle of a civil war. Less than half the country is in the control of the government of Burma. And the rebels who control more than 50% of the land are pro-US rebels. They are US-funded rebels. And then north of India, you have Chinese-occupied Tibet and China, which is an anti-India region. So overall, India finds itself surrounded by enemies. Now, are we able to prevent regime change in Bangladesh? We are not. Right? The Americans could do it right in our backyard. So does this look like dominance to you? I'm not saying that India is a weak power or anything, but everywhere in the world there is a massive US footprint, and that is something India has to simply accept as a fact. If the US footprint was not there in the Indian Ocean region, in the Indian subcontinent region, it would be a whole different balance of power. So India is what you could say a middle power, a regional power, a potential future great power, and don't even think about the term superpower. Okay? Don't even think about it. This is just reality. This is just hard facts. Facts don't care about anyone's feelings. I am as strongly pro-India as anybody you can ever find anywhere in the world, but this is just a fact. You have to be realistic if you want the nation to go in the right direction. So that's where we are. We are not even able to project proper geopolitical power projection in our own neighborhood. South of the south of India's sea coast, you have the American possession, which is the British Indian Ocean Territory, Diego Garcia, from which they can project power anywhere in the region. So India is essentially surrounded by proxies of other nations, mainly American proxies. And India will have to grow to a 10 to 15 trillion dollar economy mark if it wants to genuinely start projecting power in the region and affecting what happens in other countries, especially affecting the long-term fortunes and fates of other countries in the region. Right now, we are not in a position to do that. So there's no dominance. But the only good thing for India, which really works for India, is that we are fully sovereign. And no other country in the region is fully sovereign. Tibet is not sovereign. You think Bangladesh is sovereign? They have a puppet government now, a pro-US puppet government. You think Pakistan is a sovereign nation? They are a US proxy. Afghanistan, they depend on US support. You know, the Taliban receives a stipend allegedly from the Americans, weekly stipend. And Maldives, well, Maldives is kind of riding a strange boat right now, but yeah, it's Chinese proxy. So India is the only sovereign nation, fully sovereign nation in this region, apart from China. And China is way more powerful than India. So where's the power projection? Right now, we don't have much power projection. All right. India needs to grow. Please understand where India stands right now. India has all the potential you need for India to become, for us to become a major power in the next 20 years. Major as in what China is today, India can become in the next 20 years. By 2050, India could even possibly surpass China. Possibly. The probability is less by 2050, but very significant by 2070. But India, if things go well, will definitely surpass China and become the second largest economy in the world. And with that comes your military muscle, right? With economic muscle comes military muscle. So the potential is there, but there's also the potential for lots of things to go wrong. So we need the right kind of leadership at the helm in New Delhi or wherever the capital will be in the future. And we need good luck as well, and good policies, good economic policies, good foreign policy, and much more. So that's the situation. McLovin says, do you think India is responsible for the flood in Bangladesh? And smiley, right? Yeah. So it's funny. It's a stupid claim that, see, that's what I mean by Bangladesh has become a US puppet, a US proxy. This is the kind of nonsensical narrative that's emanating from Bangladesh right now. Their media is putting it out, and their population is eager to jump on this bandwagon. So lots of Bangladeshis are saying on social media that India is somehow responsible for floods in Bangladesh. Nonsense. Absurd. It's an absurd claim. Okay. Preetam Sharma says, when bases and interference globally help the US, then why does Trump and other Republicans oppose US interference? Trump even wanted his army out of South Korea, or is it just domestic politics? Look, Trump can say whatever he wants. The American military machine will not allow such a thing to happen. Okay. Uh, Obviously war is bad, etc., and Trump has been anti-war, and Trump has a track record of not starting a single war. The only president you can think of in the past, I don't know how many decades, who did not start a single war. So Trump actually does put his money where his mouth is. But overall, US foreign policy doesn't change no matter who is in power as the president, who's in office as the president. And Trump wanted to do a lot of stuff which he was not allowed to do. So it does obviously help the US. It helps them maintain their global hegemony over everything, or resources, over supply chains, over nations, and so on. So when it comes to Trump, he may perhaps genuinely desire some kind of more peaceful approach, but it it's impractical, and it won't be allowed to happen. If let's say hypothetically Trump comes to power once again in he wins the election, the upcoming election at the end of this year. He comes back to power next year. If that happens, and if he genuinely wants the US Army out of South Korea, I don't think he's going to be allowed to do that, no matter what happens. So it's impractical, and it's not going to happen. Okay. Nikhil Shaw says capital change in the future. Yeah, of India, right? You mean? Look, it would be good to have a different capital in India. We in India, those who are alive today, we only think of New Delhi as the capital. And if somebody proposes that you should change the capital, the standard reaction is an emotional knee-jerk reaction. How dare you say such a thing? How can you think of a different capital city? Why not? In the past, we have had so many other capitals of India in the past 3,000 years. One of the longest serving capitals of Bharat, of India, was Patliputra, right? It's currently called Patna. Historically, Patliputra. This was the capital of the Mauryan Empire, the capital of Chandragupta Maurya, the capital of Ashok Maurya. It was the capital of the Shunga Empire. It was the capital of the Gupta Empire for quite some time, right? So we had Patliputra, Patna. We've had Ujjain as capital at various points in time. The capital has also Ujjain. We've also had Purushpur as the capital at certain times. Currently Peshawar. So we've had many capitals. And today, if you see the geographical location of New Delhi, it is, let's calculate the distance, measure the distance very fast. It is about 350 kilometers from the border with Chinese occupied Tibet. And it very much comes within range of Chinese long distance assets, whether it's missiles, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, aircraft strikes, the S-400, which we also have, etc. So it's not good to have your capital so close to the border with a hostile territory, a territory under hostile occupation. Ideally, you would want a capital that's situated somewhere in the middle of the country. I mean, for example, if you look at Turkey, okay, historically, the capital for the longest time was Constantinople. Currently, it's called Istanbul. But Mustafa Kemal Ataturk was kind of smart that he made Ankara in the middle of Anatolia as the capital. It's got a very harsh climate, very dry climate, very hot in the summers, very cold in the winters. But he made that the capital. It made sense. So I would say that India also should have a capital somewhere in the middle of the country, somewhere maybe in Madhya Pradesh. Ujjain could be a candidate, or you could create a new capital city somewhere in the middle of the country. I think it makes sense that way. And if you look at the history of Delhi, I mean, some people may say it's superstitious, but it's got a very bad history the past 1,000 years. Terrible things have happened there. And kings who have ruled from there have faced lots of defeats. And even if you go back to the Mahabharata era, it is Indraprastha, right? And so on. Khandaprastha. So I think it makes sense to have a new capital, and it would be good if that happens. Well, I don't know if it'll happen anytime in the near future, because we don't like change, right? Stephen Dominic says, "What's outside our universe? Is it another universe or multiverse, or are we living in a quantum universe, just like Ant-Man and Wasp, Quantumania movie, inside any other universe?" So I haven't seen the Ant-Man movie. I'm aware of it. The guy becomes very small and goes to apparently the quantum realm, which is unphysical, but nice to have a movie like that. So the question is, what's outside of our universe? Well, we don't know. That's a simple answer. We have no means of gathering data from beyond the observable universe. The universe, we don't even know how large it is, our universe. We know that the observable universe, the one that we can observe, the limits of our observation, the observable universe has a radius of about 45 billion light years and a diameter of twice that, which is about 90-95 roughly billion light years. That's how big the observable universe is. That's the limit of our observational ability. Beyond that, we can't see what's there. So we can't even observe the entirety of the universe we inhabit. So when you have that situation, how will we know what's outside the universe, if there is anything at all? So we don't know. Of course, there are lots of theories of what could be out there, but those theories can neither be proven nor disproven. They are neither provable nor falsifiable theories. And that is the definition of an unscientific theory. I mean, it's mathematical. You can definitely do the math, but you can't neither prove or nor disprove it. So you have the string theory multiverse, you have the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, which says that we could be inhabiting a multiverse. Our universe could be just one of God knows how many other universes, 10 raised to 500 potentially, if you look at the string theory landscape, etc. So the short answer is we don't know what's out there, whether there is another universe, there are other universes out there, whether our universe is simply a small ball inside a larger universe, or whether we inhabit the interior of a black hole. We don't know. The black hole idea can be disproven, because if you look at black hole physics, then how do you explain the cosmic background radiation? How do you explain dark energy? How do you explain the accelerating expansion of the universe? So that doesn't quite fit. But overall, the answer in brief is that we don't know what's out there, and that's what drives physics. It's what makes physics, theoretical physics, cosmology, astrophysics so fascinating, because there are so many unanswered questions out there. All right. Dungar Singh Chauhan asks a very pertinent question. What does the US get by doing the strategic demographic change in Europe? And that too against their own people. What purpose could it possibly serve? Well, one would have to delve in the realm of speculation to answer this question. See, what you can look at as a potential answer to this question, what you can look at is what is happening and what is going to be the effect of what's happening. So, right now, what we are seeing in Europe, in the Western European region, is that there is this large scale illegal immigration of certain kinds of people into these countries. And these EU, this is happening in the EU, European Union nations. And this open doors policy, immigration policy, is being driven from Brussels, which is the capital of the European Union. It's where the European Union headquarters is located. So the European Union is forcing these nations to accept these refugees, so-called refugees. Now, what do these refugees look like? They are mostly young men, military-age men, and they typically come alone. They don't come with family. There are very few women and children. Generally, when you have refugees coming in, it's usually going to be mostly women and children and some men. But here it's the opposite way around. It's just young men, mostly young men, military age men. So it's not really immigration or refugees coming in. It's essentially an invasion that's being engineered. Now, these individuals who are coming in are mainly from West Asia, Middle East, some from Afghanistan, etc., and lots of people from certain parts of Africa. All young men, and they are being encouraged. They're being settled in various parts of Europe, and they are being given state support of various kinds, and they are being encouraged to integrate so to say, into European society. They're not integrating, they're imposing their culture essentially. And that's why we have so many riots and whatnot that are happening all over the place, and terrorist attacks and so on. So what is that is the situation. So right now the local population, the local people in these countries are feeling cowed down. They're feeling intimidated. They're feeling helpless and powerless, and they're trying to fight back through riots and whatnot. But then the state machinery, the police machinery, targets the locals, the natives, the indigenous people, not the outsiders. The outsiders are allowed to do whatever they want. That's what you're seeing typically in Europe. So it's sending a message to the indigenous Europeans that you are not in power, and this is what's going to be done to you. And what will happen is that these immigrants, let's say, will intermarry, hope, let's say, with the local women. And over the next few generations, a new European race will emerge, which is neither black nor white nor whatever, but not white anymore. So that's what's happening. Now, what does this do to Europe? So first of all, that white supremacy disappears because they're no longer white. Eventually, by 2100, let's say there are very few white people left in Europe. They're all mixed race. So white supremacy no longer exists. Secondly, this the German ideal of this super race or superior race, Übermensch, that dies a natural death if all Germans become multiracial. So it essentially destroys Europe. It destroys Europe's identity, and that seems to be the objective. Now, what purpose does it serve? I mean, the Americans, well, the EU is controlled by the US, and similar things are happening in the US as well. The southern border in the US is open from Mexico, and tremendous amounts of immigrants are being brought in, illegal immigrants, and they are being settled. They are being transported by the government to various parts of the US, and they are being settled in various cities in various places. So the US is also experiencing this thing. And so what is the overall objective of this? I'm not really sure what the objective is, apart from completely destroying the white race. And why would they want to do it? Well, beats me. I don't know. But what it will do in Europe is that it will destroy Europe's identity. It will destroy Europe's potential to be a great threat to the US in the future. Okay, the if you look at past history, the Monroe Doctrine emerged in the US as a response to the perceived threat from Europe. At that time, all the powers, all the nations in the Americas were essentially European colonies. The Americans had uh, gained independence from the British. The other nations and regions in South and North America were European colonies, and the Americans felt a genuine threat from Europe. The Europeans were still very powerful. So the Monroe Doctrine was a response to that. Eventually, the Americans became very powerful, and then they won the Second World War, and then they became the major power in Europe. I think they still have nightmares of those German marching boots and those Hugo Boss uniforms, and they want to end the threat once and for all. So I think that could be one possible reason why they are doing this. All right. Um, Anish says subnational diplomacy by the US is in full force in India, I assume. Should we expect something big in the coming months? Look, the Americans are past masters at subnational diplomacy. That's what happened in Bangladesh, by the way. In the months and years in the run up to the regime change operation that they pulled off successfulully. So they will engage with various political parties that are opposed to the ruling party. They will cultivate certain politicians. That's what they've done in Bangladesh. They will cultivate the opposition parties. They will uh, they will have various assets in various institutions in the education system, in the media, etc. And they will exploit and exacerbate whatever divisions exist in the nation, and they will seek to create more divisions, and then they will seek to destabilize the nation by unleashing protests, typically student protests and other protests, by creating riots like situations, etc. That's the standard playbook of regime change. Now, regime change in India is very difficult because India is such a large nation, a genuine, vibrant democracy. But what you can see is that the current government is already not a majority government; it's a coalition government. So that gives outside forces an opening. So I think in the months and years to come, there's going to be more such activity in India, more protests, more subnational diplomacy, more attempts to destabilize the nation, more attempts to dislodge the government from power. They may pressurize various members of the coalition, the NDA coalition, to withdraw support from the coalition government, etc. So these things will intensify. It's going to be a tough ride ahead for India, but we need to be prepared for it. Okay. Heman Mehta says, I've sent you an email. Please check. Okay, I'll check it out. I get so many emails every day. It's very easy for me to miss emails, but I'll see. I'll see. Okay, Shubham Raj says, contrary to Abhijit Chawda's saying in Ranveer's podcast, Dr. Somnath said ISRO is not lagging behind in terms of budgets. Throw some light on it. Okay. So I saw that little segment. Okay. So what Dr. Somnath said is that the projects that are ongoing in ISRO are well funded. The projects that are ongoing in ISRO are well funded. And sometimes you may even have to return the unused budget at the end of the year to the government. That is for the projects that are ongoing. My point is this: do we have any project in ISRO for creating reusable rockets, rockets that land, booster rockets that can land autonomously? Do we have a project for that? Do we have a project for a Saturn V class rocket in ISRO? Do we have projects like those? And we don't. Now, if you were to start projects like those, if you were to, for example, accelerate the Chandrayaan program and have Chandrayaan 10 send humans to the moon by 2035, then you will need a much larger budget. But those projects don't exist. And those projects should exist if India is to be a space power, which India needs to be. We cannot afford to lag behind and to be left behind in the space race. The nations that will lead the world in the space race in the 21st century are the nations that are going to rule the world geopolitically. India cannot afford to be left behind. Right now, there are no cutting edge projects ongoing in ISRO. It is incremental progress that we are seeing. Why, after all these years, does ISRO not have a project for reusable rocket technology? We don't have that. The Chandrayaan program is going at a snail's pace. It's happening, everything is happening, but it's happening very slowly with small budgets. So the projects that have been green lighted by the government, they have adequate budgets, small budgets, and it is sufficiently budgeted for. My point is there is a lack of ambition, not within ISRO, but outside of ISRO, in green lighting ambitious projects. That's the point. We should have ambitious projects which will require a lot of money, and those projects don't exist. That's why the budget doesn't exist. That is the point. So Dr. Somnath is right that whatever projects exist, they are well funded, but those are small projects compared to what's happening outside India. Compared to that, these are small projects that we are working on. We have a Mangalyaan mission coming up sometime soon. The next Chandrayaan mission will be an incrementally better one in a few years. We have something coming up to Venus, Shukriyaan. These are small, little incremental changes. We need to have a proper integrated plan, an ambitious plan of let's say an Indian moon base with human beings on it by 2040. The first Chandrayaan the first Indian moon landing with human beings should happen by 2035. We should have an accelerated time frame, and we should have and the moon mission, the human moon mission of India should be, let's say, Chandrayaan 10. So we need to have 7 more Chandrayans or 6 more Chandrayans before that. Do we have the budget for that? We don't. So that's my point. We need to be more ambitious. The government needs to be more ambitious. The government needs to start more projects, more ambitious projects, and for that you will need funding, which is not there. That is my point. That's my point. Okay. Atul S. Bhatt says Russia is immune to American sanctions. Can you explain why? How did they achieve it? And does the same apply to Iran and China as well? So what does it mean to for the US to impose sanctions on a nation? Let's understand how it works. The Americans control most of the world's economy. Firstly, because their currency, the US dollar, is the world's reserve currency. You travel to any country, travel in the Indian neighborhood, somewhere nearby, UAE, Thailand, Vietnam, wherever, it's okay to carry US dollars. They'll be accepted almost everywhere, mostly in most big establishments. You carry Indian rupees, won't work. You will have to either carry the local currency or US dollars. So the US dollar works everywhere. It's the global reserve currency. So the Americans own the world's reserve currency, first of all. And secondly, they own essentially every single supply chain. They own that. They control most of the supply chains. They control most of the nations that are the nodes of the supply chains. And they control the global financial system, the SWIFT system through which money is transferred almost immediately anywhere in the world, and so on. They control the entire economic financial framework of the world. Now, if they want to punish a nation, they simply cut that nation off from the framework. So the supply chains no longer work, nothing comes in. If the nation wants to make a payment to purchase something, it can no longer use SWIFT. And other nations will refuse to take money from that nation because they're scared of the US. So a nation gets isolated. They can no longer trade with others. They can no longer import what they need or export what they're manufacturing. That's how you get cut off from the rest of the world. And that's what devastates nations by being cut off from the global economy. It devastates. See what's happened to Iran. And you can do much more. You can deny supplies to a nation like Iran, for like Obama did, for example, medical supplies and whatnot, because of which you have tremendous humanitarian crisis that can happen. So that's what happens when you are under sanctions. India was under US sanctions after the 1998 nuclear tests for quite a few years. ISRO was sanctioned. ISRO, they even arm twisted the Russians into not selling cryogenic rocket engine technology to India. We had to develop it on our own, which was actually good in the long run. So that is what happens when the Americans sanction you. They can sanction certain companies, they can sanction certain individuals, they can sanction the whole nation. And in the case of Russia, they have imposed every possible sanction on Russia. So what happened? Why is the Russian economy doing well despite the sanctions? Russia's economy is doing well despite the sanctions. Russia's economy is growing faster, I don't know, 4 or 5%, way faster than the other European nations. The nations don't consider Russia to be a European nation, but that's a different story. So what happened? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because Russia is an autarky. Now, what do I mean by autarky? Look, check out. See the size of Russia. Of course, this is the Mercator projection, or because of which the nation looks much larger than it actually is. But it is still a vast nation. I don't know, 11, 12, 15, I don't know how many time zones they have. And they probably have about 50% of the entire world's natural resources. So anything that a nation needs, the Russians have it. They have unlimited, it's not unlimited, but they have as much coal as they need. They have as much iron ore as they need. They have all the raw ingredients they need for fertilizers. They have everything they need for every industry. They are a tremendously large exporter of petroleum products, oil, gas, all of that. So they have everything they need that a nation would ever ask for. And they have ensured that their oil export, etc., keeps going on. India has helped them a lot by so Russia is now India's number one supplier of oil, of crude oil. India is refining that and selling it to other nations who need that. So India is playing its part in the global economy. So because of these reasons, the Russian economy has not been affected at all. And the Russians they pegged their currency, the ruble, to the gold standard, essentially. Not quite gold standard, but close to it, which is why the ruble is still doing reasonably well, as opposed to what could have happened, and so on. So that's why the Russians they are the only nation that is actually immune to US sanctions because of these reasons. Because of these reasons. And because there's so many things that the world needs. The world needs that. The Americans buy rocket engines from Russia. The Americans still buy rocket engines from Russia. They're trying to wean themselves off those Russian engines. But the Americans have been buying that even after the Ukraine war. Russian rocket engines. The Americans have tried to reverse engineer those Russian rocket engines. They have failed to do that. That's how good those rocket engines are. The Americans are able to manufacture them in America, Russian engines under license, but they're not able to reverse engineer the engines. And when it comes to space launches, the Americans, until recently, were still uh, going to space using the Soyuz rockets from Baikonur in Kazakhstan. So that's what Russia has to offer to the world, and it's in a way indispensable to the world, and that's why Russia is immune to U.S. sanctions. Iran won't work. Iran has been devastated by U.S. sanctions, devastated. China, the Americans can't really sanction China too much because the American economy and the Chinese economy are kind of bound at the hip. Okay, the two economies are so much integrated that it's almost impossible for the Americans to sanction China meaningfully without hurting the American economy as well. So what they can do is they can impose selective sanctions on the Chinese, for example, prohibiting the uh, export of, say, various kinds of chips to China, for example, to arrest China's AI growth, etc., and so on and so forth. So they can do things like that. They can impose trade and tariff barriers on Chinese imports, etc. But overall, to sanction China the way they've sanctioned the US, the Russians, is not feasible for the Americans. All right. Bandekar Bauji says, what are your views on climate activists protesting by spraying orange paint on Stonehenge and other places? These people are barbarians. These are historic sites. These are global heritage sites, in my opinion. I know it's in British Islands, but it's okay. It's several thousand years old. It's a monument that is the collective heritage of all humanity. And by spraying orange paint on Stonehenge and trying to damage this incredibly ancient monument, what do they hope to achieve? These people are barbarians. They're idiots, and these people are hypocrites. These climate change activists, etc. They will generally work for organizations like Greenpeace, etc., which are hypocritical organizations. I've known that for a very long time. Even when I was a student, I was aware that Greenpeace is the people at Greenpeace are a bunch of liars and cowards. You know, so I don't know what they're trying to achieve. Climate change is going to happen whether you like it or not. It's happening, and for us to arrest climate change or to slow climate change down, all the nations in the world will have to come together and reach to and come to certain agreements which are going to be very difficult to implement. So by going out there and doing by performing these antics and virtue signaling is not going to change the world or save the environment. I suppose I suspect it's just a bunch of attention seekers and narcissists who do this. Very unfortunate. Okay. The light bringer says, thank you. My question is, what are solar sails? And are they really that good for interstellar travel? Okay, what are solar sails? Basic physics lesson. There is something, there is a concept in physics. It's a phenomenon which is called radiation pressure. So in the past, or even today, we have ships and boats that travel under the power of wind. They have these sails that are made of canvas or thick cloth, and those are pushed by the various trade winds, which can be reasonably predictable. And that's how these ships, sailing ships, schooners, etc., they traveled in the past and they can still travel today. That's because of the pressure that the wind exerts on the sails that pushes the vessel forward in the sea. The same principle applies to radiation pressure. What is radiation? Radiation, you can think of it in terms of photons, light. The sun is our primary source of energy. What energy is it? It's radiation. Radiation in the form of mainly photons. There's obviously neutrinos as well. There's a solar wind as well, which is plasma. But let's talk about the photons, the solar wind, the solar radiation, the light. So this light that comes from the sun, if you have a thin enough film with very small weight, then you will find that this radiation which comes from the sun actually pushes that sail forward in a direction opposite to to where the radiation is coming from. Now you can take this phenomenon and use it for space travel, in the sense that you can make a spacecraft which is a tiny micro spacecraft with a computer chip and all that, and maybe a small camera, whatever, and you can equip that with a very large sail. Let's say a sail that is 100 square meters in area, let's say, hypothetically. Okay, you put that out in Earth's orbit, for example, and then you shine an array of lasers on that light sail. Those lasers need to be very powerful lasers. But if you shine sufficiently powerful lasers on that light sail, you can accelerate the light sail to 20 or 30% the speed of light. And you can send it in a very specific direction. For example, to Proxima Centauri, our nearest star system. So if you were to travel to Proxima Centauri using the best chemical rockets that we have, yeah, it would take maybe, I don't know, thousands of years, tens of thousands of years. But if you use, I'm not sure if it's thousands of years, but it will take a very long time. Okay, I don't remember exactly what the calculation is. I'll not do it in my head right now, but yeah, it will take a very long time. But if you use light sail technology and you accelerate the light sail equipped spacecraft to 20 or 30% the speed of light, you can reach there in a few years, maybe a decade or two, maybe 2 or 3 decades. So that's what light sail technology can offer us. We are almost there. We almost have the technological means to make this happen. There is a project called Project Starshot, something, I forget the name, but yeah, it's definitely feasible with the kind of technology we have right now. The only impediment right now is to have sufficiently powerful lasers, and that's simply a question of when, not if. So maybe in 5 or 10 years we will have those laser arrays powerful enough to accelerate a light sail to 20-30% the speed of light. Then we can actually launch this breakthrough Starshot project. So that's what solar sails are, and they can be really good for interstellar travel. Now imagine you make a light sail that is 100 square kilometers, very thin light sail, 100 square kilometers, and you put a spacecraft with, let's say, 3 people in that, hypothetically. Okay, just as an example. Then if you have sufficiently powerful lasers, which will need to be way more powerful, then you can accelerate human beings to 20-30% the speed of light and send them to Proxima Centauri in a matter of 2 or 3 decades. So that's what this technology can offer. Okay. Anish. Anish says, you tweeted a few days ago that Heliogabalus was the best Roman ruler ever, or European ruler ever. Who was he? Could you please tell us about him? Well, Elagabalus was a short-lived Roman emperor. He ruled for a brief, short period of time, 3-4 years, maybe 5 years. Look it up. Okay, Google it. I don't remember how long it was, the reign, but it was a very brief reign. He became emperor when he was a teenager, and his rule as the emperor ended when his own Praetorian guards assassinated him and his mother. His mother too, I think, was assassinated with him. Now, why was so when I said he was the best European ruler ever, I was being sarcastic. He probably was one of the worst rulers of all time, and he was a very interesting individual. He was definitely of that persuasion, what, LGBTQ plus persuasion, and he transformed the palace into an LGBTQ, essentially, amusement park or something. And obviously, when you have a ruler like that who is more interested in these pursuits, pursuits of personal pleasure and all that, rather than ruling the empire, then that ruler very quickly loses the respect of the armed forces, etc. And then what happens. Okay, so I think he had some ancestry from Syria or something, that region, the West Asia region. and somehow he became the emperor. It's a very convoluted story, but his rule did not last long, and eventually he was assassinated by his Praetorian Guard. That's in brief about Elagabalus. So yeah, the world is going back in that direction. We are perhaps in the age, a new age of Elagabalus. Okay. Rehan Hassan says you are talking about widening your Siliguri corridor by occupying the territory of Bangladesh. But why? Why would you want to attack our sovereignty for your country's safety? Okay, let's take a look at the map. The Siliguri corridor. So I'm assuming Rehan Hassan is from Rehan Hassan is from Bangladesh. Okay. So this is the Siliguri corridor. This small strip of land between which connects in the so-called mainland India with India's far east. You know, the 7 states in the far east of India, and this corridor is approximately 24 kilometers wide. Okay, so that's a choke point, and it's very dangerous for India because a hostile nation could attempt to take it over and cut off India's access to the far eastern region of India. Now, I have spoken about widening the Siliguri corridor by acquiring some land from Bangladesh, hopefully in a very peaceful, friendly manner. But obviously, I understand why the people of Bangladesh would be very unhappy with that. I understand your sentiments completely. If somebody told me that we're going to take some part of your country for our purposes, obviously it will infuriate me. So I understand why the people of Bangladesh feel this way. Now the point is, why would I say this? Look, understand this, my Bangladeshi friends. Bangladesh is an artificial nation. It has always, historically, for thousands of years, been part of the Indian civilization. Bangladesh is nothing but one part of the Vangadesh, what is called Bengal today. Bangladesh is East Bengal. And West Bengal is the state of West Bengal in India today. This region was artificially, our nation was artificially partitioned by foreign powers for their own benefit. Okay, and our wonderful leaders agreed for this to happen. And in 1971, India reconquered this land, liberated East Pakistan. We should have actually absorbed this territory into our nation after a brief period of just 24 years, because Bangladesh was always part of India. Now the situation is that there are, and you know, many parts of Bangladesh should not have, many parts of East Pakistan should not even have been part of East Pakistan, because they have significant Hindu majorities there. Now it's no longer the case because the population demographics have been totally re-engineered, and very few Hindus left in Bangladesh today. 7% or something of Bangladesh's population is Hindu. In 1971 it was 20% plus, 22, 23%. In 1947 it must have been close to 30-40%, I'm not sure. So you have significant Hindu populations in the Rangpur Rajshahi region. You have significant Buddhist Hindu populations in Chattogram region. Those could be reabsorbed into India simply on the basis of the same argument, which was the religious demographics. And obviously, the other situation, I'm sure that the Rehan Ansar will not agree with me, is that there is an ongoing persecution of Hindus happening in Bangladesh right now. The media is not reporting it. They are trying to essentially continue the agenda of 1971. In 1971, the objective of the Pakistani army was to eradicate Hindus entirely from East Pakistan. So right now, some of that is happening once again, and there are all kinds of horrible things coming out on social media about what's happening to Hindus. So I would argue that India should provide help, of material help, financial help, arms, ammunition, whatever is required to Bangladesh's the Hindus of Bangladesh, to create a separate Bangladesh for themselves, where they can be safe. And maybe we can absorb some part of Rangpur, Rajshahi, etc., to widen the Siliguri corridor for our national interest. Look, that's how the world operates. I have my interest, you have your interest. I am more powerful. I'm gonna do what's best for me. The world of geopolitics, the only law, the only rule in geopolitics is the rule of the jungle. Might is right, unfortunately. Now, I don't wish anything ill to the people of Bangladesh. You are anyway my people. We are the same race, the same ethnicity. The only thing that separates you and makes you hate my people is religion. That's the only thing. And I know there's a tremendous amount of anti-India hatred right now in Bangladesh. The thing is, look, India has to look out for its interests, and the subcontinent's borders have changed multiple times in the past 70, 80 years, and they will change again. And how will they change? They will change based on uh, the interests of the most powerful nations in the region. So my country's safety is very important for me. I would, in the long run, would like to see the subcontinent united again, like it has always been. Bangladesh, the people of Bangladesh are descendants of Indians. You have the same language. The Bengali language has more Sanskrit than many other languages in northern India. The only thing is that there is this tremendous hatred for India right now. So that's what I would have to say. Look, I have no ill will for the people of Bangladesh. I want the people of Bangladesh to have as much prosperity as is humanly possible, as much happiness and peace as is possible. But the borders will change. Nothing can stop that. Okay, if one thing you can learn from history, it is that borders are never sacrosanct. Borders always change, and borders change in a direction that is outward from the more powerful nation. That's how it works. So there you have it. That's all. Okay. Okay, Savaria Seth says, what do you think about Poland geopolitics? Now, that's an interesting nation, Poland, the geopolitics of Poland. So, first of all, my friends, let's find out where Poland is on the map of the world, because that's not a nation that we often talk about in the Indian subcontinent. So, here's where we are. This is the Indian subcontinent. You go westwards, there's a temporary nation, then there's Persia, then there is West Asia, there is Turkey. You go north of Turkey, you have the Black Sea. North of Black Sea, you have Ukraine, where the war is going on. And west of Ukraine, you have Poland. Now, like I just said, just a minute ago, the borders of the world change. And these were not always the borders of Poland. Okay, the city of Lviv was part of Poland in the past. There was a time when there was no Poland either. Poland had been divided up by the Germans and the Russians, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, and so on. But right now, you have this nation called Poland, which is west of Ukraine and west of Belarus. Now, if you look at what Western commentators have to say, they are placing a lot of emphasis and a lot of hope on Poland. When I say West, I mean NATO. I mean Americans and West Europe, which is NATO. Those commentators. So look, Ukraine is right now embroiled, engulfed in the conflict, the Ukraine war, the special military operation. And eventually, most probably, the outcome is going to be that Ukraine will be partitioned. Most likely, Kiev will have a neutral government, and Ukraine will be partitioned maybe along the Dnieper or maybe along some other line. And it is also possible that some parts of the westernmost region of Ukraine may be reabsorbed by Poland. That is one. Second, Poland is probably very soon going to be Europe's number one military power. They already have in Poland more tanks and more artillery, more howitzers, etc., than Germany already. And they are in the process of buying lots and lots of weapons from the US and also from South Korea. Maybe 1,000 more tanks and much more other stuff. They're going to get a whole bunch of F-35 fighter planes from the Americans. So Poland is going to be the next European military superpower. That's what the Americans are transforming Poland into. Okay. Now, so it could be the next bulwark, the next nation in line after Ukraine. Now, the West likes to say that Russia is trying to recreate an empire and it's going to march westwards. In that case, Poland is very important for the West. Okay. So that is the military importance of Poland. It's a rising military power. What kind of government do you have in Poland? You had a right-wing government that lost the election recently, and you have Mr. Donald Tusk, I believe, who is right now the leader of Poland. He's kind of a moderate, not too right, not too left, somewhere in between, but he's way more positively predisposed to the US than the previous leader. Poland is one of the holdout nations in Europe when it comes to immigration. Poland and Hungary are paying a daily fine to the European Union because they are not allowing immigrants to come in. Those wonderful immigrants, military age men. So Poland right now is in that situation. So that's what I have to say about Poland in geopolitics. It's an important nation in Europe, uh, possible next military superpower in Europe. Not superpower, but next major European military power. Germany is being deindustrialized, so maybe the focus will now be on Poland. And Mr. Modi is gonna visit Poland in a day or so, isn't he? It's gonna be an interesting visit, and let's see what the outcomes are. There's a lot of history of late between India and Poland. When the Second World War was happening, when Poland was divided between Germany and the USSR, it was under occupation by two nations, and you had lots of Polish refugees who were trying to escape to other nations. And there was a ship full of Polish women and children who were trying to get refuge somewhere, but nobody was giving them permission to dock and to come and to offboard the ship. And that ship even came to India. Okay, that ship came to India in the 19, I don't know, early 1940s, I assume. And the British did not give permission to the ship to dock in India, but the Maharaja of Junagadh gave them permission to come ashore, and he gave those refugees, those Polish refugees, uh, refuge, shelter in his kingdom as long as the war lasted. He became their foster father essentially. And there was another Maharaja, I forget where, somewhere in Maharashtra, who also did something similar. So India was very kind to Poland, even though India was at that time itself under foreign occupation, occupation. But the Maharaja of Junagadh was very kind. He became a foster father to those kids and to those people who had come in. And I think there is a great deal of warmth because of the story still towards India in Poland. There are town squares named after the Maharaja, etc. So that's an interesting bit of history, between recent history between India and Poland. Poland could become more important geopolitically because of its military rise, and it could play an important role going forward in the days and years to come. Vidhi Maniar says, "Do you ever consider joining politics? You are needed as a policy maker." Look, politics is a whole different ball game. Uh, I have never ever considered joining politics. I don't think I ever will, because it's a whole different world, and I'm not sure I'm pretty sure I'm not equipped for that. Politics, it's all about, look, politics is the art of making compromises and whatnot. Okay, and so I'm not sure it's for everybody. So I have never considered joining politics. I don't think I ever will. Uh, if the government would want me as a policymaker or as an advisor, I will obviously be happy to offer whatever I can. But politics may not be the right thing for me. Okay, Arifin Shuo says, "Can the world ever become a single political entity in the next grand century?" Well, there could be. Look, the Americans would like a unipolar world. What does a unipolar world means? It means it's a de facto world government. So right now, for example, let me give you a taste of what could happen if there is a single world government. Okay. So right now you have these nations that are under US occupation, but the world sees them as independent sovereign nations. Japan, South Korea. Okay, their economic policy, their foreign policy, their military policy is all controlled by the US. Japan as well as South Korea. But the world sees them as independent nations. So eventually what could happen is that every country in the world could be controlled by just one superpower. And these nations, all the nations in the world, could be technically independent, but their economic, foreign policy, and military policy could be controlled by the superpower. In that case, you could have a world government by proxy without the world even realizing there is a single world government. Or you could have an overt world government in which every nation's government is destroyed and a single government officially takes charge from somewhere, maybe Washington DC, maybe somewhere else. Could happen. Um, so if US hegemony continues to grow, which it could, which it very well could because of AI and technological advances, then you could have a de facto world government in the next 20, 30 years, possibly, maybe even before that, right? Uh, so it's possible. And it's possible that you will have a world government and you will not even realize it. That's also possible. So the possibilities are endless. And a world government is not a good thing. Let me assure you of that. Especially a hidden, covert world government. Um, Anish says, I'm losing hope in this country, India, after seeing Mr. Modi taking U-turn in every good decision. Look, imagine how worse things could be if Mr. Modi was not in power. Okay? I know he's heading a coalition government right now, and there are many more constraints on what he can do. But imagine the alternative to the NDA government, to Mr. Modi's government. Imagine that government is not in power and the opposition is in power. Then you can lose hope in the country. I think there is still hope. Okay, and I don't think Mr. Modi is making U-turns in every good decision. Some things, we sitting here are not able to see every threat that the nation faces. There are threats coming from outside the country. There are threats that are positioned within the country as well, foreign assets and other assets of various kinds that are embedded in the country. And there are all kinds of parameters to consider. So sometimes you have to do the hard thing and walk back sometimes. Yeah, the farm laws, there were good laws, but Mr. Modi decided to walk back on that. And so I'm sure there are one or two more things you can think about. The main thing is that the long term and large scale national interest has to be always prioritized. And I'm pretty sure I am seeing only that. So I know that after the results of the general elections, there has been overall downturn in the mood of the nation. But I think we are still in good hands. And we have to make sure we elect the right people in power. Okay? You cannot make decisions based on emotions. So I would say that there is still a tremendous amount of hope for the country. India is still in good hands. India is still going in the right direction. Mr. Modi is facing a different set of challenges this time in his third term, and I'm pretty sure that he will make the right choices, the right decisions, and he has the strength and the fortitude and the experience to steer India through the troubled waters that we are going to be experiencing more of in the coming years. So it is good that we have Mr. Modi in power. There are lots of attempts to destabilize India and to hamper India's progress and to destabilize India's neighborhood that are happening right now. And all these things put together can make it look like the government is kind of weaker right now. But the alternative is unthinkable. So I'm glad Mr. Modi is in power. So I would say overall, be positive, be optimistic. Not everything is a U-turn. Many of the policies are still continuing just the way they were. And I'm pretty sure many good things will come up in the coming years. So do not lose hope. You have to be positive. You have to be optimistic. What's the alternative? Being depressed and being miserable. Come on. Come on. There's always hope. And there is genuine hope. Okay. So, Vibha says Modi visited Poland yesterday. Okay. Okay. Okay. Was it yesterday? I thought it was Zelensky first and then Poland. It is the other way around. All right. Cool. McLevin says, do you think the Modi brand is under decline? That's an interesting question. Look, brands. Yeah, Mr. Modi is a brand. You're right. A brand is a set of perceptions and ideas, etc. And every brand has a rise and a decline at certain points in time. So Mr. Modi's third term is in progress right now. The first term, he got 273 seats in parliament. The second term, he got 303 seats. And this time, he's got 240 something seats, right, in parliament. So there's been a downturn now. Definitely, you could say that the brand could be somewhat in decline. And given his age, I don't see him running for elections as the prime ministerial candidate in 2029. I don't think it would be advisable. By the time the BJP and the NDA should uh, put forth new leaders, and they have 5 years to discover the right kind of leadership. So I think that the brand could be somewhat in decline. Uh, Mr. Modi definitely doesn't have the kind of powerful government he had the last two times. It's a slightly more challenging time for him, and most likely this is going to be the 5 year period in which he probably transitions the reins of power to a new prime ministerial candidate. But it is still a very important time for India. Maybe the most important time for India this next 5 years, because the challenges are going to mount. Okay. Uh, Sampath says you are live on Republic TV. I was live half an hour ago. I was live at 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. So there was a discussion on Republic TV with Arnab Goswami about Prime Minister Modi's visit to Ukraine. So I spoke briefly in that. So I was live between 8 p.m. India time and 8:30 p.m. India time. I'm not sure if they are rerunning that right now, but I'm live here right now, and I'm interacting with you guys in real time. Vidhi Maniar says, how are the Israeli people so patriotic and well equipped? What is special about their education system? Could you please throw some light on the education system of Israel? Okay, so I don't know a lot about the education system of Israel. I've not studied it in any depth. What I can tell you, first of all, the education is in their mother tongue, the Hebrew language. In India, people like me had to be educated in the English language. Today, if you're a kid and you want to have a good career, a good job, you have to speak good English with a proper accent. You speak English with an Indian accent, you will not get a good job, not at all. That's the problem, you see. So there is this perception in India that if you don't speak good English, you're not educated, you're illiterate. And that creates this tremendous sense of inferiority among Indians. There is no such thing in Israel. They're happy to speak Hebrew. They're happy to speak broken Hebrew accented English, and that does not give them a feeling of inferiority. Secondly, I'm pretty sure that the history they teach in the Israeli education system is a history that puts Israel front and center, and it promotes a sense of pride in being Israeli and Jewish. In India, you get the opposite thing. There is no open, blatant Hindu phobia, probably in most of the education system, but overall the attitude is that Indian history is a series of defeats, and Indians are an inferior people, and the British did India a favor by occupying India for 2.5 centuries, and everything the British did was good for India. We did not have railways before the British came. We did not have education before the British came. Without the English language, there can be no progress, and so on and so forth. So the education system systematically deracinates and brainwashes the Indian kids and turns them into self-loathing people with a tremendously deep-rooted inferiority complex. And that's what it does. Okay, and the Indian education system also fails to instill a sense of patriotism and nationalism in the Indian people. That's the problem, right? I've seen in some textbooks they portray Pakistan occupied Kashmir as Azad Kashmir. Can you believe it? And the Indian academics, especially when it comes to the humanities, many of them are compromised. Many of them are compromised. And these Marxists and leftists have a stranglehold on the Indian education system. There is no such thing in Israel. And obviously in Israel, there is a tremendous emphasis on science and technology, on engineering, on excellence. And most importantly, the Israeli education system prioritizes merit. The Indian education system does not prioritize merit. It's full of reservations for all kinds of special interest groups. That's the problem. I could go on and on about the Indian education system, but yeah, that's what Israel is doing right and what India is not. And if India does want to become a great power in the future, we need a patriotic population. We need a population that is not burdened with a crippling inferiority complex. We need a population that is proud of the local culture, the local civilization, the local languages, and we need a population that is proficient in science and technology. And the Indian education system does none of these things. Okay, so if you want to know exactly what's wrong with the system, Indian education system, and what can be done to change it, watch Ask Abhijit episodes. I don't know, around 29, 30, around that number. There are 3 episodes, I believe, in which I've spoken about the education system, and I've given the root causes of everything that's wrong, specifically the things that are wrong in the education system, and the things that need to be done to change it. I've given everything out in detail. Okay. Bookshelf tour when? Yeah. Thank you for the reminder. I have a whole lot of books that I need to show you. I will do it soon. I will. Tanay Chandra says, I have been following Dr. Maharang Baloch, and currently the situation is very tense in Balochistan. People are being kidnapped. Why isn't India taking action in the United Nations? Is it due to Iran? Good question you ask, Hoya, the last part especially. Uh, so I remember sometime in 2014, 2015, 2016, during his first term, Prime Minister Modi, during his address from the Red Fort, whether it was 26th January, 15th August, I don't remember, but he had mentioned Balochistan once. And then there was it. So the situation is bad in Balochistan. This lady, Dr. Maharang Baloch, she's a reasonably young lady. She's a medical doctor. Her father was disappeared by the Pakistani army, and he was murdered, I believe. And her brother was also kidnapped, I believe, for a period of a few months and tortured, but surprisingly released. And you have these enforced disappearances, these killings of innocent civilians that happens. This thing happens in Balochistan on an ongoing basis. It's been happening for decades. It's a reign of terror by the Pakistani military in the region. Balochistan is being exploited. Nothing is being given back to Balochistan. Balochistan is rich in natural resources, oil, gas, all that. Let's go to the map. Where is Balochistan? You ask me. It's this region. Look, Karachi is the capital of Sindh, and west of Sindh you have Balochistan. So the Iranian city of Zahedan, it is close to the Balochistan border. Quetta is in Balochistan, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Balochistan. So it's a very large region, part of Pakistan. It used to be historically India's border with Iran. So it's rich in oil and gas. And you have this very important port of Gwadar over here, which has been handed over to the Chinese. So the Balochistan region is being exploited. It is all the natural resources are being extracted out of it, but nothing is being given back to the people of Balochistan, who are being brutalized for a long time. And this brave lady, Dr. Maharang Baloch, has been speaking out against that, and I'm very surprised that she is still able to do that. So that's the situation. So why isn't India doing any actions in the UN? Is it due to Iran? Go back to the map. Map here. So understand this. The Balochistan that is in Pakistan is roughly only half of the actual region of Balochistan. The other half is in Persia. It's in Iran. So the port of Chabahar that India is involved in, the port of Chabahar is also part of Balochistan. Okay, there are 2 major ports in Balochistan, Gwadar and Chabahar. So this entire region of Iran, the easternmost region of Iran, is also Balochistan. It is Iranian Balochistan. The people are the same. They speak the Balochi language. Now, if India were to support the aspirations, the freedom aspirations of the Balochi people of Pakistan, Pakistan occupied Balochistan, then the same aspirations would be, well, indirectly supported in the Iranian part of Balochistan also. So yeah, we have good relations with Iran. We don't want to spoil that. It doesn't make sense for us to do that. So that's why we are not pursuing this matter very vigorously right now. So Iran is definitely a factor in this. And the other factor is that Pakistan is a US vassal. Pakistan is a US client state, proxy state, puppet state. And we can't afford to do too much in there right now for the time being. So for these reasons. Okay. Ansh Prakash says, "Did you watch Beer Biceps' new podcast with ISRO's chairman, Dr. Somnath?" I haven't seen it. I saw a few small clips. Very good that Ranveer got a chance to speak with Dr. Somnath, and I will, as soon as I get the time, I'll check it out. So yeah, we are all obviously very proud of ISRO, and I'm glad that Ranveer has spoken with Dr. Somnath, and you know it will help. Uh, it will help the people of India fall in love with space exploration, science, technology, all that. If this sort of content is promoted, so it's wonderful that Ranveer did this, and I will certainly check it out at the first opportunity. Okay. Okay, McLevin says Julian Assange is free. How did that happen? Did he make a deal with the devil? No, Julian Assange was powerless, and I suppose the West was looking very bad by keeping him under bars, behind bars. The Americans were looking very bad. Okay, so I think they let him go, and they've imposed certain conditions on him that he cannot say this or say that or whatever. And overall, his wings have been clipped. He will not no longer be allowed to do whatever he was doing with WikiLeaks, etc. So they have essentially turned him into a harmless person, a person who can't do too much, and they've allowed him to walk free with terms and conditions attached. There's no deal with the devil. There's no deal with the devil. Of course, he had to sign some legal agreements and all that, which says that he cannot do this, do that, or say certain things and take certain actions. So, kind of, you could say deal with the devil, but it was enough, right? He had been in prison for such a long time. Terrible freedom. Where's the freedom of speech over here? Freedom of expression, freedom of speech doesn't apply to Julian Assange, right? Such is the hypocrisy. Bannu Gopi says, "What's the point of becoming a superpower if you can't even protect brothers and sisters in Bangladesh? After Viksit Bharat 2047, there will be no Hindus left." Who is saying that India is a superpower? What is the definition of the word superpower? From my perspective, my definition of the word superpower means it is a nation, it is a power that can intervene militarily anywhere in the world at 60 minutes notice. Anywhere on the globe. Look, here's the globe. You see this globe? Let's spin it. Take any location on the planet, and a superpower is a nation that can intervene militarily anywhere in the planet at 60 minutes notice. That is a superpower. And of course, that nation will control the world's economy and the world's supply chains and everything else. That's superpower. Is India a superpower from that definition? No. India is not even close to being a superpower. So who's saying India is a superpower? And you are right, India is currently not in a position to protect our brothers and sisters in Bangladesh. So India is not a superpower. The point of becoming a great power is that you can do it. Right now, India can't. So India should aspire to be a great power. Forget about being a superpower, a great power. So that's what we have to work towards. We should not be cynical and saying and say that what's the point of being a superpower? What's the point of being Vishwaguru? I don't like the term superpower. I don't like the term Vishwaguru. I don't like the term Vasudeva Kutumbakam. India should aspire. India should work assiduously work towards becoming a great power and becoming the preeminent power in the Indian subcontinent region with power projection capabilities in a significant portion of the Indian Ocean region. Then we will be able to protect our brothers and sisters and our friends and allies wherever we want in the region. That is the whole point of becoming more powerful. Right now, we are not. So we need to go in that direction. And Viksit Bharat is that. If we become a developed country by 2047, it will mean that we will have a 10, 15 trillion, $20 trillion economy, maybe $30 trillion economy. If we have that sort of economy, imagine the military power that we will have. We will be able to protect people in that eventuality. So that's what we need to work towards. We need to be more positive. This defeatist attitude is not going to serve us. Be more positive. And how do you be positive? By working in that direction and not spreading negativity. Please don't spread negativity. Please don't spread a cynical attitude. I see so many people making fun of the term Vishwaguru, etc. I don't like the term, but they use the term Vishwaguru as a cynical, as a means of making fun of India. And Indians use the term to make fun of Prime Minister Modi and India overall by using the word Vishwaguru sarcastically. See, this is the situation in Vishwaguru. See, that's what happened in Vishwaguru. Vishwaguru is going in the right track. This negative, sarcastic attitude spreads negativity, it spreads defeatism. I don't like this sort of behavior. It doesn't serve the nation, it doesn't take the nation in the right direction. Be positive, be optimistic, and work as hard as you can. Work towards what? Work towards uplifting yourself. Work towards developing yourself. Work towards becoming more prosperous as an individual. And if every individual does that, we will all rise together. The whole nation rises together. So you don't have to go into social service to serve the nation. You don't have to join the government to serve the nation. Just become wealthy. Become as wealthy as possible, ethically. And if everyone does that, imagine how it will transform the nation. That's what needs to happen. So please be a little more positive. All right? Interesting question by Rainbow. Were all the dance and art forms introduced to Europe by the Roma? Not all the dance and art forms, but some very important art and dance forms were indeed introduced to Europe by the Roma. For example, there is something called flamenco, right? The national music, the national dance of Spain. Flamenco guitar is a very distinctive style of guitar playing with its own um, scale, right? Flamenco scale. And then you have flamenco dance, iconic flamenco dance. So flamenco music and flamenco dance is Gitano, is Roma in origin. The Roma are Indian origin people. They were called by various names. The Gypsies, the Romani, the Roma, the Sinti, the Calderash, the Kale, and whatnot. So the Roma people, they introduced they are the originators of flamenco dance as well as music, the guitar playing, etc. Then there is a very famous, very important form of music called gypsy jazz, and there have been very famous, very iconic uh, musicians. Let me show you some of these. For example, let's go to Google. Okay. Now tell me, what's the Hindi word for wake up? What's the Hindi word for wake up? It's jago, right? So look at this. Django Reinhardt, okay, Belgian jazz guitarist and composer. He was of Indian origin. He was gypsy. His name was not Django, it was Jago actually. You can see he looks quite Indian. So he had an accident in his early life, and two of his fingers on the left hand became dysfunctional as a result. So he used to play guitar, incredible lead guitar, with just two fingers, three fingers, including the thumb. And he's one of the greatest jazz guitarists of all time. So there is Django Reinhardt. There are so many other Hono, Winterstein. This guy is another guitarist. He is a rhythm guitarist in gypsy jazz. And there are so many other people who, for example, Mireli Lagrin. This guy is another jazz guitarist, excellent guitarist, one of the greats by now. And I'm sure I can think of many more. What was that girl, shocking blue singer? I forget her name. Marichka Veresh. He was of Indian origin, gypsy. Her father was a musician as well, and so on. So the point is, a lot of the musical heritage of Europe has come from Indian origin gypsy people. There's a lot to unpack in there. Let me also show you this. If you want to uh, Okay, let's put Google back over here. And there was this movie, a very good movie called La Chaudrome. Okay, it's by Tony Gatliff. Tony Gatliff is a French director who's of gypsy ethnicity, and I'm pretty sure this could be available somewhere online. Okay, it is there on YouTube. I will not play it here, but this movie, if you watch it, it will trace the entire historical journey, geographical journey of the gypsies from India all the way to Europe through a musical journey and the various musical forms that you have in Turkey, gypsy music in Turkey, gypsy music in Egypt, gypsy music in Eastern Europe, in Western Europe, in Spain, and so on. Very good movie, La Chaudrome. So yeah, if you are so inclined, I would encourage and invite you to watch that movie. Okay. RK Kington says, how does mainland India perceive the northeastern states in terms of appearance, caste, and creed? To what extent does the media portrayal and divisive policies contribute to these perceptions? For the longest time, people in what we call mainland India had no idea that the Far East or Northeast existed. They have no idea of it. The education system, you would be forced to memorize the capital cities, Itanagar, Imphal, Kohima, Dimapur, Agartala, etc. And that's it. So there is some part of India which has these states and these capital cities, and that's it, nothing more than that. And there was no understanding of what kind of people live there, what kind of customs they follow, nothing whatsoever. I'm talking about the 20th century, even the beginning decade of the 21st century. There was absolutely no connection between these disparate parts of India. Okay, so in what we call mainland India, people had no idea of what the people in Nagaland, in Assam, in Manipur, in Tripura, etc., what these people look like, what kind of languages they speak, what is their way of life, what are their customs like, and so on. Absolutely no idea. And then when people from these states eventually started coming for work, for education, etc., to other states in India, the people of these states, because they have no understanding, they probably thought these people are Chinese or something. So there is, because of this lack of national integration, there until recently has been a very distinctive lack of knowledge, understanding, etc., about the far eastern region of India in what we call mainland India. And there have been all these stereotypes also that people create, calling everyone Nepalese, something like that. So there are all these stupid stereotypes also that have cropped up, etc. And I'm not sure what the media portrayal is. I remember there was a movie, I forget the name of the movie, some Bollywood movie around 2010 or something, maybe before that. Amartya Sen's daughter had a brief role in that movie, in which there was a story about a Bodo insurgent or something. So the portrayal was very inaccurate, very wrong, and very stereotypical. They were portrayed, the Bodo people were portrayed like savages, essentially. Then you had this movie about Mary Kom, in which Priyanka Chopra portrays Mary Kom. Does she look like a girl from the Northeast, from Manipur? Does Priyanka Chopra look like that? Could they not have selected an actress from Manipur to play the role of Mary Kom? But no, they won't do it. So media has played this role in the rest of India, not understanding or having an idea of what the Far East is like, and so on. So that's why there are all these misperceptions, misconceptions, and all. But I think now that is becoming lesser and lesser, because people are traveling more today. India is increasingly becoming more prosperous. People are traveling to various parts of India. It's easy to travel to any part of India today if you want. It'll take you a couple of hours to reach, 2-3 hours to reach wherever you want. And people from these states in the Far East are also coming to other parts of India and mingling with the local population, settling down. So now there is more understanding. But in the past, it was very bad. It was very bad. And yeah, there have been incidents of racism and all that discrimination because of this lack of understanding. Okay, so yeah, it was a very in the 1980s, 1990s, in the 20th century, there was a lot of blah blah blah, lip service to the idea of national integration. There was this this TV channel called Doordarshan, the only channel the country was allowed to watch, in which every day they would give speeches and lectures and slogans about national integration, but they did nothing about national integration. Now, the best way to integrate a nation is by raising the levels of prosperity and letting people travel. So that's happening now. So I think things will get much better in the coming years. And things are much better today compared to what it was like in the 1980s, 1990s, even 2000s. Things are much better today. um, Mohit Parashar says, can India send a manned moon mission after Gaganyaan? I think if you look at the timeline that's been proposed, India will send uh, humans to the moon, I think around 2040. Now, I have a video out on this channel, in which I've said that we should send humans on the moon by 2035. And the 2035 human moon mission should be Chandrayaan 10. And what should Chandrayaan 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 be like? That also I've put out. But that's not going to happen. Progress is going to be much slower. So I think earliest by 2040, we will have Indian men or women or both on the moon. 2040 or beyond that. Uh, Gaganyaan is the human space flight program of India. I think the first test launches could happen this year or next year. Okay, unmanned mission to validate the technology, the capsule which will carry the astronauts. So you could send a dummy human being, a robotic human being, and sensors, instruments on board this test mission, which will monitor the inside environment of the capsule, that it is safe or not throughout the mission until splashdown. So there could be one or two test missions without human beings of Gaganyaan. And I think by 25, 26, you will have the first manned mission with maybe 2 or 3 astronauts on board. So that will happen probably by 2025 or 2026. Probably. Okay, I'm not entirely sure, but hopefully, I'm hoping that'll happen. So once that happens successfully, it will demonstrate that India has the capability, the technology to send humans into Earth orbit, low Earth orbit, and bring them back safely. But a lot more technological advancements will need to be uh, demonstrated successfully before we can even think of sending humans to the moon, because that is a way more complex mission, way more complex, and so many more points of failure. We don't want to lose a life in space. We lose lives every day all across India in accidents, in trains, and whatnot. But this is a high profile thing. And if a single life is lost, the entire country will be up in arms. So it will have to be done very, very carefully, very deliberately, very systematically. I think it can be done by 2035, but the government says 2040 plus. So the first manned moon mission will be earliest in 2040, probably possibly later. But yeah, I'm excited about Gaganyaan. Finally, we will have humans in space, and within a decade, we could have a rudimentary space station in Earth orbit where somebody could stay for an extended period of time, several months possibly. That'll be good progress for us. So I find this very exciting. It's very important for India as a nation, as a world power, to be at the forefront of space exploration and space exploration technologies. I cannot emphasize this strongly enough. It's very important. So we are doing reasonable progress in that direction. I certainly wish the progress was accelerated. We are certainly capable of doing much more, but this is where we are. Anish says, "Do you still play guitar?" My guitar is outside, but I don't play guitar that much anymore. I really don't play guitar at all these days. There was a time when I was a really, really good guitar player. These days, there's almost no practice, so I think my skills are kind of rusty right now. but I haven't lost the skill of playing guitar. I can still play the guitar. I think I played guitar once to demonstrate an Indian raga or something on one of these live streams a year or two ago. So yeah, I still am capable of playing the guitar. Maybe I should reconnect with it if I can find the time. If only I can find the time. You see, time is so limited, and there's so much to do, especially with somebody like me who has so many interests and so many things that I need to get done. So yeah, so I can still play the guitar, but I'm not really playing much these days. Lipton Barua says, your comments on the RG Car Medical College incident. Do you think that girl will ever get justice? Can CBI do it? Look, I typically don't look at what's happening within the country when it comes to these matters. I look at geopolitics, I look at things outside the country. So, with that as the context, I really haven't looked into the details of what's happened. I know there's this terrible, horrible thing that's happened, this incident, which reminds me of what happened a decade plus ago, the Nirbhaya thing. Horrible and simply unacceptable in any civilized society. And I don't know what the situation is, whether the culprits have been identified, caught, what's happening. I don't know. I am not, keeping in touch with what's happening on a daily basis. I just know the outline of the case. So I don't know what the situation is. I prefer not to look into these matters because it messes up my mind. Okay. Uh, Obviously, it's absolutely unacceptable, condemnable, and whoever has done this should face the fullest extent of legal retribution of the law. So I don't know whether the CBI is involved or not, which agencies are involved. All I would say is catch the perpetrators and punish them to the maximum extent allowed by the law. That's what I would say. Um, it gives India such a bad name, such a bad reputation. There is this perception that India has a very high incidence of rape. India is the rape capital, which is absolutely untrue. India has one of the lowest incidences of rape in the world. I know there are so many cases that go unreported. The same happens in the US. A fraction of the rape cases are reported in the US. Most of these are never reported. And yet the US has a way higher incidence of rape than India. But the media likes to emphasize this. I'm not saying the media should not cover these cases. It is very important that these cases are covered. And it is more important than that the culprits are caught and brought to justice. Justice needs to be visited on such people, such inhuman barbarians. Even animals don't behave like this. So that's my comments on this. I don't know much about the matter because, first of all, it messes my mind to look into these matters, and I prefer to look at things outside the country on a geopolitical level. But yes, these things are horrible and they should never happen. Okay. Gaurav Arora, welcome. Thank you for becoming a member. Appreciate it. Okay, same matter again by Rajat. How can the Kolkata horror be avoided in the future? Seems India is becoming a rape capital, but it is not becoming a rape capital, but that's the perception that the media is creating, especially the foreign media. Who is to blame? You two cents. Chowda index again. Okay, the index will. Thank you for reminding me again. I think last week also you did that. I'll bring it out very soon. It's ready, but I just need to prettify it, make it acceptable for public unveiling. Anyhow, the how can this Kolkata horror be avoided? What you need in the country is speedy justice. What you need in the country to avoid these horrible things is the guarantee that if somebody breaks the law, then they will be brought to justice in a time bound manner. So if you do a crime, it should be almost guaranteed that you will be caught. That's what needs to happen. Right now, unfortunately, that's not quite the case, is it? There are lots of crimes that go unpunished. There are lots of crimes in which the evidence is destroyed, allegedly. And so many such things. So as long as you have such a malfunctioning system, you will have these cases. Some horrible individuals will feel that they can get away with this. So that's what needs to happen. And yeah, so that is what India lacks right now, and that's why you have crimes that happen. We need to definitely clamp down on every possible crime, and the most effective way of doing that is to guarantee that if you do a crime, you're going to be caught and you're going to be punished swiftly. That's a systemic reform that needs to happen. And right now, the systemic reform is not happening. And that's why these cases happen. Okay. Okay, let's talk about aliens. Yeah. Yes, aliens, baby. Shivam Sharma says, what are the scientific challenges in verifying claims of extraterrestrial encounters in the context of the US government's historical secrecy and classified information? So it's been alleged that the US government has made contact in the past with extraterrestrials, and they apparently have alien spacecraft that they have re-engineered or are in the process of re-engineering. There have been allegations of projects like what Project Blue Book or something. There have been movies about that, TV shows about that. Uh, Littlefinger was in one of those TV shows, Project Blue Book, I believe, and so on. So there are all these uh, claims about extraterrestrial activity, and apparently the aliens, they love the US the most. That's why they appear in the US the most, right? Now, what are the scientific challenges in verifying claims of these phenomena, extraterrestrial encounters, etc.? It's very simple. Produce evidence that is incontrovertible. My first question is, why does an alien sighting, a UFO sighting, never happen above a crowded city where like 5,000 people can take film and video with their camera, with their cell phone? Then nobody can deny it. Once 5,000, 10,000 people see it, and they all take out the cell phone and start filming, then nobody can deny this happened. But it's never happened that way. There's not a single case where there are lots of different pieces of footage that come out from 1,000 different angles. It's always some random event somewhere, and it's taken by some one photographer, and the image is usually grainy. Anybody can do that. I can demonstrate that to you. I can do it myself. Shall I show you? Okay, let me show you what I can do. Let's go to my Instagram account. So this is my Instagram account. Now, if I go back in time to a couple of years ago, where was this? I'll show you an image of UFOs. Okay, let's go further down, further down. I have an image of UFOs on my own Instagram account. If I can discover it. Here we have it. Check it out. So this is the picture I took in Ladakh. This is the Pangong Lake, okay? And you can see a UFO in the sky. And here is another one. See, it's moved. It seems like it's moved. So this is the quality of images you get of UFOs. Now, do you know what this is? This is the reflection on glass of a light. It's not a UFO, but you can pretend it's a UFO and people will believe it. Okay, I was just taking photographs from my cell phone camera of the lake and its surroundings from inside the place I was staying. And there was a glass because it's frighteningly cool out there. So you need to be inside. So there's this glass window from which I'm taking the pictures, and there's lights inside on the ceiling, and this looked like a UFO. And I put it out as a joke, as a UFO, and people started believing it. So that's the thing, that's the quality of images you're getting of UFOs. And that's why people are skeptical. So you need evidence that is incontrovertible. You either need a sighting, a mass sighting in which thousands of people can take images, or even 20 people is enough, or you need actual evidence of an extraterrestrial spacecraft that the government discloses and people can visit and see, and scientists can test, something like that, something that is scientifically provable. That's what is required, and that's not there. And that's why people, including me, are skeptical about this. Stephen Dominic says, why are scientists only speaking about terraforming Mars instead of geoengineering the Earth into? If humans perhaps go to Mars, then the condition could become like the Earth, polluted and destroyed because of human evil nature. Um, so why uh, are people like Elon Musk, for example, speaking about colonizing Mars, occupying Mars, terraforming Mars? It's because today the situation, the technological level of various countries is such that they can destroy the entire planet. We are obviously talking about nuclear war. So the US and Russia have sufficient nuclear weapons to destroy the entire planet. So it makes sense for us to have a backup planet somewhere. And that's why that people talk about going to Mars and settling there. And then terraforming the planet would take time, obviously, but that's why they talk about. But yes, it's possible that if the same kind of people go to Mars, then they will ruin Mars as well. It's most likely that by the end of this century, the 21st century, at night you will see lights on the moon, and you will have human activity, mining, and all that on the moon, and the moon will become unrecognizable. So yeah, well, that's just what it is. Lipton Barua says, your views on Ishmet Inonu. Well, that's a name out of the past. Interesting. So I think Ismet İnönü was the first leader of Turkey after the tragic death of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. Ismet İnönü was a soldier. He served with Mustafa Kemal Atatürk in the Turkish War of Independence in 1920s, early 1920s, and he was a companion of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. He was a very stable, bureaucratic kind of person, very dependable kind of person, and Atatürk clearly trusted him. And after the death of Atatürk, Ismet İnönü became the leader of Turkey. So that's what I can say about him. Overall, reasonably good guy, I would say. Good soldier as well. Um, Mayuri says, what are your thoughts on Malcolm X? Do his opinions or ideologies resonate with you? I haven't really studied Malcolm X and his writings, his sayings, his ideology, etc. I haven't really studied that. Of obviously Black Power movement and so on, all that was there. Yes, clearly. So he was involved in that. 1950s, 1960s. He was one of the prominent leaders of the Black community in the US. Uh, but I am not very familiar with his ideology, etc. So I'm not really sure if I am in a position to answer that right now. See, you see, I haven't studied everything in the world. Yeah. Raghav says, which language was spoken by the Turco-Mughal kings? So initially it was the Chagatai language. People like, who was the first individual to enter India? It was Babur, right? Zahiruddin Babur. So he clearly spoke the Chagatai Turkic language. And later, by the time Aurangzeb was ruling certain parts of India, I think the language spoken was Persian. Persian. Because Aurangzeb's mother was Mumtaz, right? Shah Jahan's wife, and she was Persian. So yeah, there was a transition from the Turkic languages to Persian. So the Turkic language was most likely Chagatai, which no longer is extant today. It's an extinct language. But it was spoken in the second millennium AD, and it went out of existence later on. Um, Shaswat says, show some light on the life of Rash Bihari Bose. Once again, that's another historical figure that I have not studied in great detail. There are many historical figures that I have not studied. Dr. Ambedkar, I know next to nothing about him. I've never studied his life, his writings, whatever. Same with Rash Bihari Bose, same with Malcolm X. There are many people whose life I've not studied. So, yeah, obviously, he's one of the important figures in the Indian revolutionary movement, closely associated with Japan. I think he had a Japanese wife and so on. But beyond that, I would not be able to tell you much at this stage in time. I would have to read up about him to be able to answer this question in any detail. So, yeah, there you have it. Now, um, Pran Q2 says, who is Ramalakshmi? I have never met Ramalakshmi. I've never spoken with Ramalakshmi, but I am so grateful to Ramalakshmi because he puts out the timestamps for every live stream without fail. It is such a tremendous service he's doing to the entire community of viewers of this channel, and to me also, because it's such a big help. So I don't know, I would love to reach out and meet Ramalakshmi one of these days and express my gratitude in person. But all I can say is, Ramalakshmi, thank you very much. I'm extremely grateful for everything you do. Really, really appreciate that. Okay, I think we have crossed 2 hours and 10 minutes. Um, Maybe I can take one or two more questions. Arnav says, what are some of your favorite science books? My science books are the dangerous ones that are full of full of equations and full of problems. I see these books here. Some of these books are the Shom series books on various topics, which I worked through as a student. Extremely valuable books, indispensable if you want to really master a subject, because it's not enough to just read theory in all in textbooks. You have to work through problems, hundreds of problems. So the Shom series books are great when it comes to studying and learning various aspects of physics or science. I'm sure they have Shom series books on chemistry and biology and whatnot also. So the Shom series books. One of my favorite books on mathematical physics is the one by Mary Bose. Um, it's a pretty. It's one of the first mathematical physics books you will work through. Um, what else? The quantum mechanics book by Siegfried Flügge is one of my favorites. It's the book that separates the men from the boys, so to say. You want to really do quantum mechanics, you work through the problems in the book by Flügge. And that book is probably out of print by now. Tremendous book. So I don't read popular science books. I have a few here and there, but I don't really read them. Not very fond of those. I have a couple of books by Michio Kaku, and I have some popular science books. But overall, my favorite science books are the rigorous scientific books, the books from which you can actually gain new knowledge and do actual research. Okay, let's take maybe one last question. Okay, this is the last question for today. Shri VR says, how to enjoy uncertain times in life. Look, the way to enjoy uncertain times in life is to worry about what you can control, and don't think about what you can't control, because it is beyond your control. You should be aware of what the world is like and what are the things that are beyond your control, the environmental factors that you don't control. You should be aware of them. You should plan for all possible outcomes that potentially could happen, but worry about only the things that you can control, and those things you do well. And overall, be positive, be optimistic, be cheerful, and try to enjoy everything you do, and have some fun every day. That's how you enjoy uncertain times in life. And obviously, you work hard. The harder you work, the more you can enjoy the fun times. So that's what I would say. And with that, I'm going to end today's live stream. I can see many more interesting questions, but I'm going to end it here because we've crossed way beyond 2 hours. So thank you so much for all your questions, and I will see you in tomorrow's live stream. Thank you very much. Take care. Keep asking questions and keep raising your standards every single day. Keep improving yourselves. Thank you, and I'll see you in tomorrow's live stream. Bye.